Hello and welcome to AB Knits. My name is Emily. I'm the maker and founder of everything you see here on this channel. And today I want to show you everything I knit, crocheted, and made in 2023. Again, my name's Emily, and you will see appearances from Moonlight here and there depending on how long she wants to hang out with us. But she does generally love yarn almost as much as I do. And almost every morning I can find a yarn ball just thrown around the house because she was playing with it at night. So she's as big a fan of knitting and crafting and yarn as the rest of us. So this is the third year that I have made a video like this where I showed you and wrapped up everything I made in the knitting year. And this year I have not posted a video in a little while to YouTube. It's been about 8 months looking back at my channel, and honestly, it's kind of been peaceful, but at the same time, I have missed it as well. I really like interacting with this community and sharing what I've made, not only for you guys, but also for myself, just to review my knitting process and see how I've grown and what I've loved to make over the years. So it was really important to me to sit down and make this video at least, and to share it with all of you as well as for myself. And let's dive right in. So this year I had a goal of making 23 knits in 2023. However, I did not hit that goal. I made 18 things this year. Now, I'm not upset about that. I am perfectly okay with that. I feel really at peace with the knitting that I completed, knitting and crochet that I completed this year. So broken down, those projects of the 18 include 2 hats, 3 baby blankets, 4 pairs of socks, 3 pillows, 3 ornaments, and 3 tops, one of which I am wearing for you here. I will get into this further when I talk about the sweaters and tops that I've made. But if you are curious, this is the heavily modified Cozy Celtic Raglan by Knititude. So I want to break this down by category so it's easy just to reference, like, hey, if you're only interested in the hats or the accessories, you can just go to that chapter. But if you want to see the whole thing, which love it if you stayed around, you can check it all out. But I am going to roughly go in the order that I made things because I have a tendency to dive into one category, knit my little heart out with that category, and then move along and not come back to it for a little while. So I want to start telling you and sharing with you the hats that I made this year, which it was only 2. I'm a little rusty here. It's been a while since I made a video. I started the year by using some stash yarn with these 2 hats. These were for a trip to Colorado. So I live in Orlando, Florida with my partner and our kitty Moonlight. And in February of this year, we were going to Denver, Colorado. So I felt like we needed some new hats. And this first one has been very well loved and very, very used, even outside of visiting Colorado. So this is knit with Wool and the Gang Crazy Sexy Wool. It is a super, super bulky knit. This is a very bulky yarn. I am going to reference the Ravelry page so I can give you all of the details, but I did not follow a pattern for either of these hats. I've knit a ton of hats, especially bulky hats at this point, and I don't feel like I need to follow a pattern. But the needles I used for the cast on were a US 15 10 millimeter, and then for the body of the hat I used a US 19, which is a 15 millimeter needle. I used 210 grams of yarn. I do like to weigh all my projects at the end, although I don't think I weighed all of them that you'll see here, so when I have that info I will share it. But I cast on 48 stitches, used the smaller needles for the ribbing, and then cast on. I started the decreases, it says, as I got to this top black yarn, but I used the rest of the black yarn I had. I chose some gray, white, and very dark green, and for the stripes I slipped each stitch when I switched color, so it wasn't just solid stripes. This, as you can see, definitely needs a shave. The wool is super shedding, but he wears this all of the time, like all the time. Even though we're in Florida, he is a native Floridian, and people here are crazy. They wear beanies and hats even when it's 90 or 100 degrees outside sometimes. I don't understand it. I don't and can't do it, but hey, I'm very happy that this is well loved and used, but I definitely need to give it a good shaving or whatever that proper terminology is for it so that this can look good as new again and not so used and old. I obviously did not put a palm on that one, but that's a different story for the one I made for myself. This is the one that I made for me. And let me get up these details for you. So again, I used now the brighter version of my Wool and the Gang scraps. I really like color. It brings me joy, especially in these accessories. So this is a mustard yellow, and then I used a coral, which is my favorite color of all time, is a coral salmon color. For this hat, I used a 12mm needle, a US 17 for the whole thing. I cast on 36 stitches, and I increased 4 stitches after the ribbing. And then again, when I changed colors, I slipped every other stitch for more interest. And then I actually ended up running out of my Wool and the Gang yarn. So this pink and purple that you see is my hand spun for my very first ever hand spun project. I spin with a spindle. I do not have a wheel, and I haven't really spun all year, so I don't have much to show you, but I spun a lot or more in 2022, so that's what this yarn is from. And I definitely want to get back into it. There's just so many crafts, so many projects, so many things I want to make, and not enough time for all of them. This pom, I love these poms. They're from, at the time the shop was called ARKC Handmade. She has since rebranded to Ashling Studio, and she focuses more on embroidery now, I believe, but I absolutely love her poms. They are my favorite. So I chose a gray one here for a really neutral vibe for the rest of this super colorful hat. I think it's really beautiful. It's really fun. To me, it's something you might see in like Anthropologie or Forever 21, not Forever 21, Free People, excuse me. And I just really love this aesthetic. I loved wearing it, and I certainly will again when I'm in the cold weather. Okay, that is my 2 hats I made this year. Let's move on to the next category, which is baby blankets. These I don't have next to me to show you because I have all gifted them, but I made 3 baby blankets this year. 3 of my coworkers were pregnant pretty much at the same time in the spring/early summer, and I decided to make each of them a blanket. Something this year that I am really at peace with, again, when it comes to my knitting, is the fact that I didn't make any knits for sale, I didn't knit for profit, and I didn't make anything that anyone asked me to make. I knit completely on my own accord. So these blankets are something I wanted to gift to them. They were surprises they didn't know, so I didn't feel a deadline or pressure to make them, whereas I do with other gifts or other requests or knitting for money when someone pays me to knit. And I'm really, really happy that I did that this year. I want to carry that into next year as well. But back to the baby blankets. So the first one, all of them, I went to on a big shopping spree to Joann's and Michael's in my local area. And honestly, it's been a while since I've been to either of those stores, and Joann's was the winner for me. I found beautiful Karen cakes there. They were so full of color. They were so beautiful in the rotations. Karen cakes usually start with one color and then they gradually go into different ones. So it's like a self-striping-esque vibe, and I was able to use one cake as a contrast color, but it looks like I'm using all these different colors because it's just changing gradually on its own. So for the first baby blanket I made, I will insert pictures as I have them. I crocheted, all of these 3 baby blankets were crocheted because I wanted them to go fast, and I chose acrylic yarn from a box store because I wanted it to be affordable for me, but also very washable and easy for the new parents to use. I didn't want it to be something that they had to be super sensitive with. They already have a new baby. They don't need more things with special care instructions. So the first one was the Good Vibes Throw by Tony Lipsy. This again was crocheted. I chose to use a 6mm hook. The two yarns I used were the Lion Brand Pound of Love in the colorway Light Pink as the main color, and the Karen cake, which again is self-striping, is Karen Cinnamon Swirl Cake in the colorway Hibiscus. So this one looks like I'm changing the yarn, but I'm not throughout. I'm simply using these 2 colors independently, and then I added a border. It's a simple scalloped border. I thought it was really cute for a baby, and it just brought everything together. I used the multicolor yarn for that scalloped edge. And then the second one I selected was the vibes the parents were going for, or the theme of the nursery was spring, and they wanted to focus heavy on the greens and blues and less on the pinks. So I chose again, 2 Karen cakes. The first was Karen baby cakes in the colorway Retro, and this one had blues, yellows, and pinks in it. And then the other Karen cake I chose was the colorway Pistachio 17020, and this one was all green. It went from light green to a dark foresty green, so it had all shades of green in it, and I thought that was really pretty, especially for their springtime aesthetic. The blanket pattern I used for this was the Meadowland Baby Afghan knit version by Irina Poludanenko. Excuse me for pronouncing that name wrong, I'm sure. And so you heard me say knit in that pattern tile, right? I modified. I made it crochet. So I started it knit. I said this is taking way too long. I ripped it out and I ended up doing double crochet for everything. And it is essentially 4 triangles. You pick up stitches and knit around, and then the last triangles you seam together. And I believe it was a paid for pattern, so I don't want to get into it too much more than that, but it ended up being really beautiful. And again, I did do a border. However, this border it's based off the border in the pattern, but it is actually a free YouTube tutorial from Tony Lipsy of TL Yarn Crafts that I selected and chose to do for the border of this blanket. It's like a bobble and it's really cool. So I finished this one really quickly. I thought the colors were really fun to see coming together. So this blanket, I started March 24th and I finished April 22nd. Okay, so that is the second baby blanket I made. So I knit it in just basically a month, or crocheted it in basically a month's time. And actually the first blanket I talked about, I knit in a matter, I keep saying knit, but I mean crochet. I crocheted in a matter of weeks. I believe it took me 2 weeks. Now for the final baby blanket I made this, used the right word that time, April 26, 2023 was when I started, and I completed it June 18th, 2023. So this is the Daisy Chain Blanket Crochet version by Vicki Bird. This one is a little bit complicated and I don't have a ton of pictures. I was rushing to finish and didn't. And I just completely spaced and blanked on getting pictures. But for this one, I used Loops and Threads Impeccable in the colorway Soft Rose as a main color. I used about 2.5 skeins. I used Loops and Threads Impeccable in the colorway Erin, which was basically the white yarn for the petals. And I used, again, Loops and Thread Impeccable in gold tweed colorway for the centers of the daisies. And I really felt like that tweed was so cute, and the little speckles and pops of color in that gold yarn just felt really true to a daisy or to the middle of a flower. So this one, I found 2 daisy baby blankets that I really liked. And one was the Daisy Day Throw by Rachel Milsner, and the second was this Daisy Chain Blanket by Vicki Bird. I kind of combined the 2. I decided to use the second Daisy Chain Blankets chart with blanket 1 squares, which were double crochet, and I kind of combined the sizes because one was bigger, one was smaller, and basically I combined the 2 in my own way. These were a corner to corner, a C to C crochet blanket, which I'd never done before. If it was a rectangle, it'd be a lot easier to modify, but because this was a chart, because it was corner to corner, and I was a very beginner and inexperienced to this technique, I followed these 2 patterns and kind of combined them. Was that the right thing to do? I don't know, but it worked for me, and I really liked the way the blanket came out. It was a great size. Overall, this pattern was the most complex of the 3, given all of the intarsia, the technique, the graph, the chart, but it was so fun and so worth it. And she sent me a picture of it in her baby's crib, and I'm going to send that to you, or I'm going to post that here as well, just in the nursery, because I think it's adorable. Moving on from baby blanket time, I said, whew, okay, I'm done with crochet for a minute, and I'm especially done with baby blankets for a minute. I'm gonna dive into something new that I've never tried before and never even knew I wanted to try before. I was that knitter that always said, why would I knit a sock? I can buy socks from the store. I don't want to spend forever using fingering weight yarn just to make a sock that's gonna go on my foot that you're not gonna see. But something called to me this year, and I started making socks. So the first one I made was, I do have those with me, I just have to find them. So the first one I made was a gift for my boyfriend because that is the only thing he's ever asked me to knit for him. He says, can I have socks? Can I have socks? Can I have socks? And if I'm being honest, his ideal socks would be all black and they would be knee-high. But no, I had to compromise for myself, for my sanity. And so I chose a still what I consider masculine color, and I made them semi-high, but definitely more manageable in my opinion. So I purchased this yarn from I purchased this yarn in 2022 from Frankie Gray Fibers with the intention of, hey, this is the yarn I'm going to make when I make him socks eventually. And the time came mid this year that I said, it's the time, I'm casting on these socks. So I actually started in the midst of the baby blankets on February 8th, but I didn't finish until May 13th. So 2 months or so, 3 months or so, excuse my math. It took me to make these socks. I used a tutorial from the Crazy Sock Lady on YouTube to make these, and I love her tutorial. I highly recommend, since I've tried a couple different ones, but this is still my top. This is the one I would recommend for any and all beginners. This is actually the very first sock I ever made, and then this was its companion. So they are a little bit different. Let me tell you about them. So I followed the same pattern. This one, I used 8 or 9 inch circulars because I thought I like knitting in the round. I don't want to do magic loop. I don't like doing magic loop from my sleeves. I always prefer doing in the round. So I thought that's how I'd feel about socks too. It is not. I did this whole sock on the 8 or 9 inch circulars, but they were so small. That's one of the reasons it took me so long to make. Let me see if I put how long it took me. So I started February 8th. I finished the first sock on April 23rd. And then I finished this sock by May 13th. So this one is what took forever, and this one I kind of sped through when I realized that magic loop was my preferred method. So I put aside the 8 inch circulars after this sock, and this one just flew by then. I really like it. There is only really one visible difference in my opinion, and that is I think this is called the gusset, right? Or is this the heel flap? I don't know. There's a part that you slip stitch on the back of the heel, and this one looks a lot more like hers does in the tutorial, whereas this one, the first sock I made, it is super tight, so you can't even see those like rows. That's really the only visible difference in my opinion from these two. I really like them. They fit his foot, he says, but they don't fit his ankle. He has a smaller calf or ankle, and he says they fall down. So I'm thinking about putting some elastic in the cuff maybe and see if that helps, because I want him to wear them more often. I spend a lot of time on them, and it's the only thing he ever asked me to make. So after that, I knit socks for myself, and I decided I want shorties. I don't need the long cuff. Like I said before, we live in Florida, and shorties are my go-to. So this time though, and these were cuffed down. So we start up here and you knit all the way down to the toe with the heel flap and gusset construction. And then for my first pair of socks for myself, I tried toe up. So I chose to follow for this Knitty Natty. I really like watching her podcast, and she has a sock tutorial on YouTube, and she also has a whole sock construction class, which is like an investment, and I wasn't ready to make that investment, but I wanted to follow her tutorial because I've heard her talk about toe up socks, and I've heard her talk about her favorite heel, which is the Fish Lips Kiss heel, and I wanted to try that out too. So this yarn is also from Frankie Gray Fibers. It is the colorway Kissing Booth, and it is a pink with a lot of different colors, and honestly, the colors I think are a little bit less vibrant after soaking and washing and blocking than they were when I first got them, but they're still really pretty. So this is, as I said, is knit toe up, excuse for the hair attached. So toe up, and you use Judy's Magic Cast On, I believe, which was really fun to try. And then the heel is the Fish Lips Kiss heel. For that tutorial overall though, I would say it's not geared for a beginner. To me, it's a little bit more cookie cutter, and it's not so much here's what you do. It's kind of like, it's just more general, which is, I figured it out, but but I had to watch a lot of other tutorials to do so. Whereas my first one with the crazy sock lady, just watched her video all the way through and we were good. So probably that class that I talked about that Knitting has is more intensive than her tutorial. So I did end up purchasing the Fish Lips Kiss Heel pattern, and well worth it. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. So the pattern has a whole breakdown of how to measure your foot with certain different measurements, and these are all key to where you start the heel, where you start the ankle, where you start, I don't remember all the names for the different points in it right now, but all these lines mean something. And I made one for myself, I made one for my boyfriend. I've got my foot measurements on the back, and I carry this around with me in my knitting tools or my sock bag because I just think it's so helpful. So here I actually had to knit 3 socks. The second one, obviously the other one I frogged because I don't need 3 socks, but the first one was huge, humongous, way too big, massive. Because I didn't think about, as I'm trying it on my foot, that I wanted the no or negative ease. Instead, I just knit too many stitches, basically. And also I knit really loosely. I'm a loose knitter. So I knit for most of my socks I've found. I like 52 stitches for my sock. I use a size 1 2.25 millimeter for my socks. And I've found that 52 stitches is the width around that pretty much works for me, which is not a lot of stitches compared to most patterns. That's usually like the small or extra small size, but with my loose gauge, I'm just not gonna go down more knitting needle sizes right now, maybe in the future. I do know that doesn't create as dense of a fabric as people suggest with socks because it will wear more often and it can create holes easier because the fabric is not as dense and it is a little bit of a looser gauge than is recommended by most socks. But for now, I am okay with it, I am fine with it, and that is what I found fits on my foot, and that's what we're going with. So anyway, love the Fish Lips Kiss Heel pattern. I highly recommend it. It's only like $2 or something like that, but it is filled with information. It's fully customizable, so she gives you a calculation for whatever amount of stitches you need to make the perfect heel, so you don't have to just be limited to like the 3 or 4 sizes, say, that may be in a pattern. So, love that. Then I knit another pair of socks for myself. This I used the same colorway Kissing Booth. I used most of the rest of it. And then for my contrast toes and heels, I went back to the other colorway by Frankie Gray Fibers. This pattern is the No Fear Shorty Socks by Denise DeSantis, Earth Tones Girl. This is once again a cuff down heel. This is 2x2 rib, whereas all the other socks were 1x1. I realized I like the look of 2x2 a lot more, but something I realized with pretty much all of my socks is I thought I was binding off or casting on loosely with the cuff, but I need to do it even looser, be even more intentional there because it's a little bit tight to get on, but it fits. So none of these are like worth ripping out, but it's just something that I have to continue to be super mindful of, is really making that cuff cast on or bind off, whether it's toe up or toe down, toe up or cuff down. So many words, really loose. So hopefully that makes sense. This is, again, needle size 1. The construction is top down. I chose a stitch count of 56 stitches for the cuff and then went down to 52 after the heel. So it's a heel flap and gusset for the heel construction, and it's a rounded toe for the toe construction. I think that she spent a lot of time on her pattern and her tutorial, and I really appreciate that. But for me personally, the Crazy Sock Ladies was a little bit easier to follow, and I'm going to leave it at that. But ultimately, I'm really glad I tried the heel flap and gusset construction and a top down construction for my own pair of socks. Something I did feel like I learned from these was just that I don't love the contrast color for this type of construction, heel and toe. I would do maybe like some kind of short row heel or a afterthought heel, and then it's more is more of a contrast color, if that makes sense. Because this is just a little bit right here, and on the foot, it looks a lot smaller than it does here in person. I'd rather have a larger area, specifically on the heel, for that contrast color. Same thing for the toe. I don't feel like there's much contrast here. I wish I would have started the contrast color like maybe, you know, half an inch sooner or something. So I just have more of that. It just looks so small when it's stretched out on the foot. I'm pausing for a water break. Okay, water break completed. Let's jump right back into my last pair of socks that I made this year. These are the DRK Everyday Socks by Andrea Mowry. They, I feel like, are infamous at this point. A lot of people have knit them. They probably have thousands of project pages on Ravelry. They are traditionally a 2x2 ribbed sock. However, I did modify and make 3x1 rib. I just prefer that. For me, not so much the finished product, but the process of knitting 3x1 is so much more meditational for me than a 2x2 for whatever reason. So I decided if I'm gonna knit a whole sock in ribbing, I'd rather have that 3x1 than that 2x2 pattern. So again, DRK Everyday Socks by Andrea Mowry. Drea Renee Knits is her username. I knit the size small. I used a US size 1, 2.25 millimeter needle. This yarn is Nomadic Yarn Twisty Sock in the colorway In Bloom. I used 52 grams of it for these socks, and I love this self-striping yarn. I had a gift card for Etsy, and I purchased two, I think, this one and another skein from Nomadic Yarns, and it was so fun. I really enjoyed knitting with these self-striping socks, and I'm excited to do it in the future again as well. So for my stitch count for these, they were 52 stitches. Once again, I used Magic Loop. They are a toe up construction. I did Judy's Magic cast on for one of the socks, I think this one, and I did the Turkish cast on for this one. The Turkish cast on, I would say, is much easier, but I do think Judy's Magic cast on might be a little more seamless. But also, I have like a contrast color right at the start, so it just stands out a lot more. I did not care about making my socks perfectly striped the same. Clearly, they're similar, but definitely not identical, which I don't need identical socks. They are on my feet. I am cool with that. And even if they weren't on my feet, like I said earlier, I like color. I'm okay with not perfection. So the heel is, I believe, called a Flegel heel. I still don't really, I'd have to knit another one and pay a lot more attention. Like, it was really easy to make. Her pattern was very well explained, but exactly what the Flegel heel is, I don't remember. So I'm sorry I don't have much info there, but again, the cast on, or the cast off, I should say, is a little bit tight for me. I think I went up a couple needle sizes. I did Jenny's Super Stretchy Bind Off for the bind off up here, and honestly, I would go even stretchier, find a stretchier bind off, or go several more needle sizes up next time, because again, it's just a little tight to fit over the tightest parts of my foot. But I'm very pleased with these. I really like them. I'd certainly knit them again, perhaps in the 2x2 construction or pattern that the pattern calls for. So that's my exploration into socks this year. And I will say from that, I learned a lot. I'm really excited to advance my knitting education in socks. I am not done. I have a lot more I want to knit, a lot more constructions and patterns that I want to try. These are all relatively simple socks. I would love to get into pattern socks one day, but something that is really nice about the socks that I knit are they're so easy on the go. I've now got a project bag that is small enough to fit my sock in. I put it in my purse and I carry it around with me. I love knitting on my lunch break, and just knitting in stockinette or an easy ribbing pattern for right now is what I need from the socks that I'm selecting. So I'm so pleased with these. I'm really glad I got into socks, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. 2 more categories to go, and then we are wrapped up for the year. So next up, I knit some home decor. So we moved this year. I absolutely love our new apartment, and I decided that outside for our balcony, I got a little outside couch, and I wanted it to be so colorful and cute, just bring me joy when I walk out there, and pillows are a way that I'm going to do that. So I used a lot of leftover yarn, again, just dove into my stash, and this is the first pillow I made this year. It is a granny square pillow. There's the front, and here's the back technically. So this is called Scrappy Pillow by Dana Ray Makes. And I, again, didn't give you any dates for most of those socks, so I'm sorry. But I will do that for this pillow. I started it on September 10th, and I finished it September 14th, so I did it in 4 days. I did not knit it, I crocheted it on a 5mm hook. And it is all one giant granny square that you seam together. I chose, oh, this button came unbuttoned. I chose to not seam this side together fully. I chose to put buttons on here because of moonlight. Our pillows do get hairy and furry a lot when she sheds, so I like to wash them, and especially because this is acrylic yarn, it's easy to wash, so I wanted something that would be easy to take off the pillow. That's why I decided to use buttons and not completely seam it up and close it. This side is actually my favorite side. It's a lot more colorful than this big blue square that's on the front. So this back side is my favorite. I lean heavily towards pinks and corals and shades of red. So love this pillow. Pillow number 2, excuse me, girly girl, that I made was again crochet and again super scrappy. So this is technically a scrappy freehand pillow, but I was inspired by a tutorial I found on YouTube from One Dog Woof is her username. It was a wall hanging that she made, and there was a wall hanging about how to make crochet look woven. So here's the back. The back is a lot more simple. It is just, again, all scraps. These are acrylics from the leftovers from the baby blanket, and I did slip stitches of random colors in random yarn I had. This one you don't see any buttons, but I didn't weave in all my ends, so right here the end is just stuck in, and I can take apart this row right here if I need to wash this. We've got some bobbles in here, we've got some simple stitch, we've got, this is actually lacy, but you can't really tell because the yarn is, just because the way the yarn is, which is fine. And then this is a cotton yarn. It is not acrylic, but it's a cotton in like a wavy stitch pattern. It's a really fun loop stitch maybe. And then I did some slip stitches here with this beautiful coral color that, again, is one of my favorites. So I really love this pillow. I think it's gorgeous, and I just love how freehand it is, and everything is different about it, yet to me at least the colors somehow come together. So I love it. And the final pillow I made this year was again a scrappy one. This is called the Pasadena Pillow by Peony Knits. I've had it in my library for a while. Do I recommend this pattern? Not so much. I think you could figure it out on your own in a little bit more of a structural way that made sense, but if you like it, you like it. I really liked it. It's a lot smaller than I thought it would be. She knit it using super bulky yarn, and I chose to use what I had in my stash, which is worsted. So again, the pink is left over from the baby blankets, and the red is a Wool-Niggang Superwash Merino, I think. Super Trooper wool in the colorway Coral Crush is the red. I held both of these yarns double, and I used approximately 100 grams each of these, of the colors. The pillow is smaller, like I said, than I thought, but it's okay. I think it really complements the other ones. They all have like a pink and a reddy vibe, which I think really matches my style. So I like it. I used a 10mm, not hook. I used 10mm needles. This one's actually knit. I knit this from October 8th to November 30th. That is it for the pillows for the, oh, not it for the home decor. Okay, not it for the home decor. I apologize. These are 3 ornaments that I crocheted this year. So they are tutorials that I found on YouTube, and these 2 right here are the same. Let me put this down. Oh, sorry. So this has like a faux little cable in the middle. And they, like I said, these are the same. And then this one is just a, oh, let me put that ornament hook aside. This one is just a like rotation. The yarn I used is again a leftover acrylic. It was like a holiday color, but it's a tan with gold in it. Sweater time. So I only made 3 tops or 3 sweaters this year. They are not all full-on sweaters. So I'm going to start with the first one, and this one is actually the very first make of the year, but the other 2 I knit towards the end. So that's why I've held this portion for the end. So this is my gorgeous tank top. This is the Azalea tank by Joan Ho. I think it is stunning, literally stunning. It's so detailed, maybe the most complex make I have ever made. And I was really excited to start the year with a test knit. So this was a test knit. It's the only test knit I did this year. And I started this on January 3rd, 2023 and completed it March 11th, 2023. I think it was literally the day of the due date or the day before the due date. I cut it down to the wire with this. Again, it is the Azalea top by Joan Ho. I used a US 2.75 millimeter needle. Now I know this set is much lower than what she suggested, but like I said, I am a loose knitter, and I also think she's a tight knitter, if I remember right. So I love her patterns. This was very detailed, and I just think it's stunning. I was really happy to knit a tank top because of our climate, and I think I got some really cool, fun, and pretty finished object photos, and I used yarn from my stash. So I kicked off the year using, I think, 3 balls. I didn't write it down, but it's the We Are Knitters, the cotton in the colorway terracotta. And I'm pretty sure I had 3 balls of this, and then I finished up right here in this pillow with the rest of it. So I'm a big fan. I love it. It is cotton. It is DK weight, but I think the construction, the tank top, it's semi-cropped as well. It's perfect. It doesn't bother me even on the hottest days. I love it. I love reaching for this, and I'm so proud of it. I think it is my most favorite make of the year, if not all time. Then sweater number 2 is what I'm wearing. I actually started this again early in this year. I think I started it, let me give you the exact detail, but I just finished it in December. So I put it on hold for a long time. I've had this sweater in my mind for literally years. This pattern came out, it's the Cozy Celtic Raglan by Knititude. This pattern came out in December of 2018, and I bought the pattern immediately when it came out, and I've wanted to knit it ever since. So the pattern calls for a super bulky yarn, a super bulky acrylic lion brand yarn, and I modified heavily, and it also calls for a much larger collar than this. It's actually a double collar folded over. But again, given that I now live in Florida, even this is probably too hot, but days like today, it's great. It's like 50 degrees outside, so it's the first time that I'm wearing this. I didn't even get to wear it on Christmas, unfortunately, because it was a little bit warm that day, but I'm excited that I get to wear this today. So I'm from Chicago, so when I'm home for Christmas, I will be able to wear this just fine. The yarn I chose is We Are Knitters, the petite wool. The colorway is red. The needle is an 8 millimeter. It's a US 11. I started this on March 22nd, and I finished it on December 3rd of 2023. So I basically calculated. I did a gauge swatch. I chose the gauge swatch I wanted. My chest circumference is approximately 40 inches. I wanted a 44-inch chest, so I had 4 inches at least of positive ease. By April 24th, I did the tubular bind off for the body. It is still pretty cropped. It's just below my natural waist, I would say, and that's what I wanted. I then picked up for the sleeves, and I was frustrated. I felt like whatever was happening, the sleeves were just way too big and bulky for what I was looking for. So that's when I set it down. I said, hey, this isn't the sleeve I want. It's too big. It's not what I'm looking for. So I set it down. I put this in a little bit of rest time, and I pulled it back out on December 3rd. Finished the sleeves. I had no problems with them when I pulled them back out. This is my holiday sweater. This is my Christmas sweater. I love it. Something I've, like I said, been wanting for literal years now, and I finally have it and finally finished it. So I'm super happy that I can check that off my list of makes because I've just wanted it for so long. So it's done, it's cute, and I love it. And it's so cozy. And my final finished object of the year is the gingerbread sweater by Espace Tricot. I knit the size 4. I started this on December 3rd and I finished it December 23rd. So it took me only 20 days to make. It is a fingering weight sweater. And here it is. Don't judge me. It is crazy. I understand. Here it is. It is crazy. It is crazy. I understand. Don't turn it off the computer, please, or the TV. I am going to explain this. It is crazy. It is crazy. It's even crazier than I wanted it to be, but hey, it is what it is. Also, a little trick. I put a piece of yarn and I tied a bow on the back so I know what's the back and what's the front really easily versus just like inspecting it every day for where the short rows are when you're trying to wear it. So just a little trick. All right, let me give you the details. I used a US size 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle. I've never gotten, this is kind of something like socks. I thought, what the heck am I ever gonna do with a bunch of mini skeins in an advent? But this year, in November, so I was very late, something switched and I said, hey, I do want to treat myself this year. I do want to gift myself something in December. This though was not from a yarn brand. It was actually just from a knitter's yarn stash on Etsy. She was selling, she said, I've bought way too many mini skeins. I have enough where I can make some advents for people. And I've already caked up all the minis. I put them in little bags. So I have little bags that were numbered 1 through 25. And let me show you, it kind of looks like this. I've obviously opened them, but she had it all nice in these little bags that were numbered, and that was really cute. So I decided, hey, I am going to knit one stripe every day as I open it. I'm not going to overthink it. I am just going to go with the flow, one stripe at a time, and I'm not going to work ahead, or I'm not going to open ahead. I'm not going to rearrange colors. I'm simply gonna go with it. This is gonna be a fun surprise adventure every single day. And that's what we have here, a surprise adventure every single day. So every color is 8 rows. I knit the body and the sleeves at the same time. So the sleeves do correspond with the body stripes. And then the sleeves have 2 more stripes on them. These 2 stripes are not in the body. I wanted a kind of cropped look, which I think is a little bit longer after blocking than I desired, but hey, it's still cute, it's still pretty. There is 25 stripes in this, and they all were just opened as I go. Overall, like I said when I started talking about the sweater, it is a little bit crazier than I expected, but it was really fun. It was fun to open each one. It was fun to not overthink it. It was fun just to be surprised every single time. Whew. So that is my wrap up of knitting in 2023. That is every single thing that I made. Now I kind of want to share a couple of reflections, which I already touched on, but I'm going to touch on a little bit deeper just for a moment here. And that is my goals and whether I met them or not. So I only really had 2 goals as I came into the year, as I said already, which was the number of 15 or the number of 23 makes, which I made 15. And then if you count these 3 yarn ornaments, I made 18 things this year, which I'm okay with. I am at peace with. And that is one of my biggest reflections of the year, which I know I already talked about, but it's just how at peace I am with my knitting. I've loved the lack of stress. I feel like I've had self-imposed pressures because I was trying to sell my knits. I wanted to make a profit off this hobby, but now that I have released that expectation of myself and I'm just knitting for me and just knitting for fun and knitting when I want to knit, it's been so beautiful. This winter season, I have started knitting so much more, especially since my sister and I have been bonding over knitting even more. It's reignited my passion for the craft, and I love that. I'm having so much fun knitting, but not forcing myself to knit all the time, not knit for a video or not knit for this channel and not knit for another person, but just for me when I want to, has brought just that keyword, peace, so much peace. And then that other goal, which was decreasing my yarn stash, I feel like I really accomplished. Obviously I did buy an advent, but there were a lot of projects this year where I used skeins from my stash and just brought that number down. I don't have the exact number for you right now. Maybe I'll do a video counting it. Something else I did this year, which is yarn related but not knitting or crocheting. I'm not sure how well you can see these frames behind me, but I wove. For our new home, I took a lot of my neutral colored yarn and just on a piece of cardboard, I wove all these yarns ins and out, and I put them in a frame that I thrifted, and I absolutely love them. I think they're beautiful projects. I like the DIY, but also they're just so beautiful in my opinion. I really like using yarn for things other than what they're maybe intended for when my intentions for them originally. So for 2024, I am bringing with me 3 whips into the new year. The first of which is something that I started but did not. All of these I started in 2023. This one has been on a little hiatus for a couple of months now. I wanted to finish it in November. I didn't get there, so I put it on pause so I can work on my Advent project. This is the Stephen West mystery shawl from this year. This is the Geo Gradient. These are clues 1 through 3. However, I barely started clue 4. I am 1 row in and then I set it down. It looks like I might be in the middle of a row even. Oh yeah, look at that. I'm in the middle of a row. But I love, love, love this. This is all fingering weight yarn. It's actually all yarn from my stash again. It is leftovers from the first Stephen West shawl I made, which was 2 years ago. It was the shawlography. Yeah, the shawlography, I believe. And then the other bits, I had every intention of making last year's. Don't remember the name of last year's mystery knit along. And I started it and I still have clue 1 halfway done in my little stash bag, but I'm gonna rip it out. And so the yarn that I bought for that, I have repurposed into this shawl. And I love it. Like I already said to you, I am a pink coral fan, and I just think this is like the epitome of my colors. So it's super pretty. I definitely want to finish it, but right now it's on hiatus and I am perfectly okay with that. So let me throw that back in the bag, but it's a really fun knit and I only have 1 more clue to go, but I got intimidated by the size of clue 4. It was like 400 stitches in a row or something, and it just sounded like a lot at the time. So I put it aside, but I do want to pick it back up and finish it. I think it's really beautiful. The next project I'm bringing with me into the new year is a sock. I just started this sock not too long ago. I can actually look at my Ravelry and tell you when I started it. And I see myself finishing this in January because I like it that much. Okay, so this is the Smooth Operator Socks pattern by Susan B. Anderson. It is a top-down sock. I am using Regia from Arnie and Carlos. Here is the yarn. It's supposed to be a self-striping / self-patterning yarn. I think my gauge might be off because it's definitely doing more striping than patterning right now. It's going to have an afterthought heel. I have this little yarn in right here, which denotes where the afterthought heel is going to go. And I'm really enjoying it. And knitting it on that size 1 2.25 millimeter needle. I'm making the size small. These are for myself, and obviously they do have a longer cuff, so they'll be my first longer cuff pair for myself. But because it's January, or right now it's December 30th, but it's December about to be January and it's like 50 degrees outside, I was inspired to make at least 1 pair of socks with a longer cuff for me personally. Here's the whole skein of yarn. It's really fun. It's really pretty. I bought these from a yarn shop in Denver when we were in Colorado earlier this year. The yarn shop was called the Tangle Ball, and it was in Edgewater, Colorado. And then this also was a gift to myself this year. This is a handmade sock bag from I Love You. She has a podcast here on YouTube called I Love Knitting, and her shop is called I Heart You. Her I Heart Knitting is her podcast. I Heart You is her shop on Etsy, and she is in Canada, and she just makes really gorgeous bags. So this is one that I gifted to myself this year, and I now have this just in my purse as my go-to lunchtime or outside of the house knitting. And the final whip I am bringing into the new year that I started is the Rocket Tea by Tanis Lavalley. And this is Advent project number 2. So this is the Rocket Tea by Tanis of Tanis Fiber Arts. And I am repurposing the leftovers from my Advent, but this time instead of going in the order that I opened them, I made an order that I love and I want to knit, and I am loving it so far. And I'm doing kind of a Roy G. Biv gradient, so we start, you know, in the reds, we go to the orange and yellows, green, blue, and now I'm in the violets. I am throwing in a gray stripe every once in a while because I'm going to have gray be the, it's an I-cord V-neck and an I-cord cast off. So that's going to be gray, and I'm going to throw in, like I said, a gray stripe every here and there. So I am knitting the size 5 for this top. This is something that I just started on December 28th. And it's a fingering weight, but I'm already this far. I'm gonna knit on it some more today, and I thought about it at work constantly the last couple of days. Like, I'm just really excited to knit on this. I'm very, very happy with the knits that I am bringing into the new year. I cannot wait for what this year brings. It's gonna be so much crafting, I think. I recently acquired a sewing machine, so I'm gonna learn that. So much making is gonna occur in 2024. All right, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot longer than I thought. Wow, this is a lot of talking. And I can't believe Moonlight stayed and hung out with us this whole entire time. But we hope that you have a very, very happy 2024. You get to do all the making that you want. You learn all the new procedures, techniques, crafty, fun, new things in the new year and the year to come. And thank you so much for being here. Bye, friends.